Hello pals, this is Wario speaking, and welcome to a new episode of Gaming Mysteries. Today we're gonna talk about Pokémon. And if you didn't know, Pokémon is one of those games or series that has so extremely many questions and theories and creepypastas and generally very creepy stuff. Just to mention a few of these, we have the Hypnos Lullaby creepypasta, we have a theory of a trainer called Silver being Ash's father, we have the Pokémon Lost Silver creepypasta, we have Ash's coma theory, and so many others. There are so many stories and theories and histories of all the different Pokémon and the characters that if I was gonna talk about all of them now, it would take such a long time. Pokémon holds so very much of questions and mysteries and theories that that's what makes it so amazing. But today, we're gonna talk about the Lavender Town syndrome. The stories and the theories and all of this around Lavender Town is probably one of the most famous creepy things inside of Pokémon. But before we go into the Lavender Town syndrome theory, we're gonna look at the early versions of the first Pokémon games ever released. In February 1996, we received the first ever Pokémon games, Pokémon Red and Pokémon Green, or Pocket Monster as it's originally called. These games would later transform into Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue. So these games had a lot of flaws. It had a lot of glitches, a lot of bugs, and a lot of even game-breaking glitches. Many of the sprites, they looked awful to be honest, if you look at some of these right here. Many of the sprites didn't only look weird, but also very creepy. Luckily, a few months later, Nintendo released a third Pokémon game, Pokémon Blue, with all major bugs fixed, all sprites completely redrawn. And this Pokémon Blue version would later become the Pokémon Red and Blue that we know today. Many of the sprites were changed for the better, like Gengar you can see here, although it seemed that Nintendo failed at some sprites. In the original Green and Red, Kingler had his left claw a lot bigger than the right one, just like he is now in the modern days. However, in the final version of Red and Blue, Kingler had both of his claws at the same size. And if you look at coughing here from the original Green, his skull mark was below his head, which is how it's supposed to be, but in the final version of Red and Blue, his skull mark was above his head. So we don't really know why Nintendo did this, if they were just mistakes. But also another thing that was changed from Pokémon Green and Red to Pokémon Blue was the music played in the scariest Pokémon town in history, Lavender Town. Lavender Town is a graveyard town. If you talk to people there or read signs, you can see that there's a graveyard and people come there to pray for their lost Pokémons. There's also a Pokémon Tower that holds like spirits from dead Pokémons. So you can really tell that this is the scariest Pokémon town in all games, at least if you ask me. Especially if you listen to the stories around this town and the music that plays. So right now I'm gonna play to you the music that played in the original old Pokémon Green and Red. And I warn you this. The music is not pleasant for your ears, alright? I'm not gonna play the whole thing, but I'm gonna play a bit for it so you can hear how it sounds like. So there you go. Now the Lavender Town syndrome is a mixture or a collection of many stories and theories around Lavender Town. So one theory that's, I don't know, maybe be real, is that when Pokémon Green and Red first came out in Japan, there was a lot of people that committed suicide after listening to this song. There's told to be some hidden frequencies or a specific part in the song that like triggers something in people's mind that like drives them crazy. And this was with young teens from the age of 10 to 15, And it was because that they could hear things that grown-up people couldn't, because their ears was, under development or evolution. If this is real, I don't think so. We haven't really heard anything about it on the news, but it is creepy as hell, no doubt. Now when Pokemon Blue came out and the American versions of Pokemon Red and Blue, they recomposed the Lavender Town music to make it less scary. I'll let you listen to it now. It is still scary, but you can definitely hear that it's something different. Now, as I told you, the Lavender Town syndrome consists of many stories and things combined. One of them was being this Lavender Town music that would drive people crazy and having these hidden frequencies that would affect people, or at least young people. Another story here, or another feature in the game that actually could be real, is the story of Buried Alive. Now, inside the coding of Pokemon Blue and Red, there is an unused script of a trainer called Berryman. This Berryman, or Buried Alive, was supposed to be the boss of the Pokémon Tower, that huge tower in Lavender Town. He would be waiting in the top floor. However, he was replaced with Marowak's ghost that I will talk a bit about later. Now, according to the script, when you talk to Buried Alive, he would say, "You're here. I'm trapped, and I'm lonely. So very lonely. Won't you join me?" And then the battle would begin. Now, this is how the sprite of Buried Alive would look when you were in the battle scene. You can see he's like a skeleton, zombie-like creature that is crawling out of the ground. And strangely, he would have a Gengar, a Mach, and 2 non-existent Pokemon that would be called White Hand. Now, in the script, it was not written what would happen if you lost the battle, so the game would basically freeze. However, an unknown programmer wrote something on a web page one day that, there was a specific ending that happened to him. And this ending, or what happened in this ending, was basically that Buried Alive said, "Finally, fresh meat," and then there would be like lines of eating sounds, and then there would be a game over screen, something that never happened in Pokemon before. You can see a screen right here. It would show like Buried Alive dragging the character down into the ground and become a game over screen. And apparently, whenever you turned on the Game Boy again, after this has happened, this screen would appear and a lot of eating sounds would appear. The purpose in this is unknown, but it's scary. Also, the Buried Alive Game Over screen is not everything in Lavender Town that is like exclusive to that in the whole Pokemon universe. But you also have a Pokemon that you cannot attack or capture. This is actually a Pokemon, or not really a Pokemon, but it's called Ghost. This Ghost can be found in the Pokemon Tower. You can, when you encounter a wild Pokemon in Pokemon Tower, you find Ghost. You cannot attack Ghost, you cannot capture Ghost, and Ghost has no sound. So it is basically a dead Pokemon, most likely at least. Also, in the coding of the game, there is a Ghost that has actually an animation, but you cannot interact with it, and it's really just in the tower, just to create the atmosphere or, frighten the players. It was never implemented into the full game, but it is in the coding, so it's basically a Ghost that had an animation that would, its purpose was to frighten players, most likely. Now here's something very interesting. Not long ago there was released an anime called Pokémon The Origins, which contained a few episodes of Trainer Red, the player we are playing as in Pokémon Red and Blue. Now in episode 2 of Pokémon The Origins, Red was in Lavender Town, and we could see this story about Cubone and his dead mother that I will tell you about in a minute. Early in that episode, he was, inside of a building there in Lavender Town and was talking to 2 people. And then when Red was talking to those 2 people, one of the 2 persons that he was talking to, which was a woman, said that there's a white hand on your shoulder. And then he looked at his shoulder and then there was nothing there. And then he turned back and the 2 people were gone. Now this is very scary. Those 2 people were apparently ghosts, maybe? dead beings? Could this white hand actually be referring to Buried Alive? The old creepypasta? It is very interesting, and Pokémon Origins was just released just a few weeks before this video is uploaded. Now we're gonna recap the Lavender Town syndrome by telling you quickly about the Cubone story. This story is both featured in-game and also in this episode of Pokémon Origins. It tells of Team Rocket that one day came and was looking for Cubones to steal their skulls in order to get money cash for it, and one Cubone was nearly caught, but his mother, which was a Marowak, protected him, and that Cubone got away, but Team Rocket actually killed that Marowak, the Cubone's mother. And one day, an old man found this Cubone and he brought him home. And Cubone's mother, that Marowak, had now become a ghost because he couldn't rest in peace, and that Marowak was now roaming Pokémon Tower. Then when Red came along, he used the Silpscope and he managed to identify this ghost, which was Cubone's mother, and then Cubone and Marowak's ghost was reunited and Marowak could finally rest in peace. It's so weird because throughout all these years, we only looked at Lavender Town as scary and creepy and dark and haunted. Even this Cubone story, at least I have looked at it as very frightening, but when this Pokémon Origins episode came, I've started to think that maybe Lavender Town isn't as scary and dark and frightening as we think, but maybe more sad when you think about it. Because two of the scenes in this episode is one of the most sad scenes I've ever seen in Pokémon history. It's incredible. And this story also brings up another theory about Marowak, Cubone and Kangaskhan. When you look at the little baby Kangaskhan is carrying, it actually looks very like a Cubone without its skull. So this theory is that when Team Rocket came along and they took many of the skulls from many Cubones, that Cubone without the skulls actually evolved into Kangaskhan. So the theory is that Kangaskhan is actually an evolved form of Marowak. So this really concludes our session for the Lavender Town syndrome in Pokémon. I want to say thank you so very much for watching. If you could click that like button, that would be really appreciated. Leave a comment below of what you think and subscribe for more. And join me next time when I'll be covering the Ash Coma theory here in Gaming Mysteries. So again, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.